send me a link.
Yeah,
Aaron, you said Tannenbaum. Would you just send me something about that?
sure, absolutely.
See, it's easy making friends. Well, welcome, gang, to this
Well,
May
I have to.
16th edition of the Wise Crowds Design Call. Now that we are all friends for a long, long time, and we have discussed interesting invitations, we can jump into the content of the day, which will be our program of Wise Crowds. And once I find that pesky, they changed the friggin' menu again. Um, Once I figure out how to, there it is. It's the big green button, the one that I keep avoiding looking at. Let's see. There we go. And now we can get into it. So we find ourselves in the Wise Crowds design call. And Wise Crowds is going to help us go through a pattern of exploration where we're going to give and get help on a couple help requests together. But before we get into that, I just want to invite everybody, regardless of their familiarity with liberating structures, um, to um, to take advantage of the opportunity that is presented to take up a membership role that may be different than what you expected before you got here. Basically, wherever you are in the liberating structures learning journey, there is good work to be done. So I just put in the chat a link to this document that I'm sharing on the screen. And if you want to sign the guest book, that will be super helpful. So I can send you an awesome proof of participation. That you'll find at the top of the document. But here, what we have is the liberating structures development phases. If you are relatively brand new to liberating structures, if you know plus or minus 0 structures by name, then that is awesome that you have joined us, and you can help us out by helping us to ask the sort of hard why questions that challenge our assumptions. It's hard work to do, but if you do that, then we will have an extraordinarily good call. If you are a cautious optimist familiar with plus or minus 5 structures, if you can help us out by asking for clarification when we get into talk and shop and jargon and start referencing things that you're not familiar with, if you can just raise your hand and say, whoa, hold on, what is that thing that you just dropped there so casually? I've never heard of it before. That'll help us to slow down and make sure that we can all learn together. And for those of you that are rapturous super users familiar with plus or minus half of the liberating structures toolkit, let her rip. Just jump right into the action in response to those questions and try and answer the questions that you haven't before, that you're not sure if your answer is perfect or clean enough. This is a really warm room and a great opportunity to get in the practice of explaining and answering those questions. And for those of us in the Maestro Minimalist phase that are familiar with more or less all of the Liberating Structures toolkit, then our invitation to you to help us have a great call is to make space for other people to answer those questions and then build on their input based on your experience. And if you do that, if we all do this different stuff, we'll have an incredibly great call and learn a whole shit ton of stuff. And today we are going to use the pattern that is Wise Crowds. Wise Crowds is very similar to Troika Consulting. One person is going to take on the role of the client. We've got a couple help requests. I think Noemi has a help request, and I believe there was another help request that I saw. But one of us is going to take on the role of client, and they're going to tell us about their help request, their situation that they would like to plan. And then the rest of us are going to take on the role of consultants. And after listening to that help request for a couple minutes, we're going to ask a round of clarifying questions. Very important to remember that clarifying questions are clarifying questions. They are not hidden advice. We'll want to wait till the next round. And when we ask the client to actually leave the conversation, to turn themselves on mute and to turn off their webcam, but listen very closely as the consultants then have a conversation about the client help request, really trying to answer two questions. What structures come to mind in response to this help request, and how might we stitch them or string them together to help the client address their situation? And then after the consultants have done that for a while, we'll invite the client back in to tell us what they take away from having heard our consultation. And then we'll move on to the next one. So does anybody have questions about the pattern of wise crowds and how that's going to work? Corina, what's up?
Not so much about how it works, but I have just read the book and I thought this exercise called Troika. Is that different, Troika?
Yeah, Troika is very similar. The difference is really in the volume of people. So
Okay.
troikas are
just
usually
3.
done in these
Okay.
triads, right? And then we would all go around the circle taking a turn. Whereas here, we're just going to put a couple people in the hot seat, so to speak, and
Yeah.
we'll all act as consultants and
Yeah.
have that coaching conversation together.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Thanks for the clarification. And so it looks like I got design briefs from both Tom and from Noemi for today. So I think Tom had a little bit more heat or desire to get consultation. So we'll start off with him and then we'll move on to Noemi. Does anybody have a help request that they didn't submit via the Google form that they would also like advice on? Awesome. Then Tom, you want to cue us up and let us know about your situation?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give that a shot. This is my first call here, and I am fairly new to liberating structures, so I'll just throw that out there. Probably become evident quickly. So yeah, my situation is I'm planning a pilot program for a client. I work with teams, generally learning and development teams in larger organizations. So I am in the process of designing a 3-month pilot program for the team. There's about 8 to 10 people that will be participating. The main thing is going to be 3 monthly 90-minute workshops done virtually. And, I'm really looking at, I have some experience in kind of facilitating virtual workshops and trying to, I'm new to a lot of these liberating structures, but, I always try to make them very interactive. I'm really trying to take that to the next level for this one, and looking at liberating structures as a way to do that, make them very generative, very interactive. And again, these are with kind of learning design professionals as well. So I really want to bring some stuff in that's not common, I think, in the field, and show them by example some different ways of interacting in a group setting, in a virtual group setting.
Okay, so let me see if I get the basics from you so far then, Tom. So you're going to be hosting this session for learning and development professionals. And you said there will be 3 separate, and when you say 3 monthly calls, so that means 1 call per month of 90 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, and these will be of the learning and development professionals. And I understand that you have the goal of wanting to show them some new tools, but in terms of their goals, why are they showing up? What are they hoping to get out of participating in this session?
Yeah. So the main focus here is, it's with one team within a single organization, and they're really looking at transitioning the L&D function kind of into, some people may be familiar with 70-20-10 here. You might say it's kind of an emerging role for L&D, really supporting informal learning, going beyond just formal training. And there's some new mindsets. So within this first 3 months, the big focus is on kind of shifting their mindset, and also kind of cultivating some shared vision as far as the evolution of the team's role within the organization, and really driving engagement as well. focused on developing a strong sense of how their work relates to the bigger picture, and giving them kind of a sense of competence to be able to navigate these changes. So I think a lot of it does have to do with shifting and cultivating a certain kind of mindset, though, within this first 3 months.
Well, that gives us the basic nuts and bolts. What clarifying questions do we have in the group?
Yep. Wendy?
What's your awareness or knowledge of or sense about the culture from the top of the organization? What type of feeling do you get about the power and status dynamics that are already there that could possibly impact your work with your team?
Yeah, good question. I think I don't have a real strong sense of it yet. It's a new client, but the sense that I do have is they, there are definitely some barriers to the kind of mindset that we're looking to cultivate here. That a lot of what they're doing, I think, is I would consider kind of situated in an older paradigm of learning and development. Doing a lot of stuff with competency models and thinking about continuous learning in terms of building like a Netflix style training platforms and stuff like that, which I'm not, I could argue that stuff has its place, but I think like, a lot of it is kind of this mindset of, learning as training. And, I think that really, I sense that as a big part of their culture. So I think there's going to be a challenge of breaking through that. And, one of the ways I'm planning to do that is just to help them kind of, part of this mindset shift is also just help them kind of explore the culture and gain more, like build some consciousness around the culture itself and even what culture is in itself, rather than trying to push like some version that I perceive as better of the culture, right?
I wanted to ask, was there some event or, what prompted this project? What is this? Obviously, they're bringing you in, or you're doing this in response to something. What's the response? What are you responding to?
Well, good question. I think I've been working as a consultant in this space for the last 7 or 8 years. Specifically, but this is actually, I'm in a little bit of a transition in my business where I'm looking at kind of productizing my offer. And so this is actually a new offering that I'm focused on trialing here with this first client. But yeah, it's really about helping L&D teams make this specific transition. And I think what really prompted it is just experience working in this field and really perceiving the transitional state of the field as a whole, and a need for L&D teams to make these kinds of changes and develop new mindsets, develop new capabilities and new cultures specifically.
No, that's great. But what is it about from the organization that hired you,
Yeah.
from their point of view, what did they respond?
Yeah, well, actually, the main client there, who's the director of the department, is I've worked with her before on as a colleague on a previous project years ago. So I knew her, and we've been keeping in touch. And really, I think what prompted it is, she's struggling with this transition very specifically. So I think it's a very good fit. They've tried to kind of adopt these 70-20-10 practices and have been struggling with them. The approach of kind of an overly theoretical or technical shift has caused them some problems. And so she came to me very specifically, you know, we need to work on mindset, we need to work on culture. That's kind of where she's coming, but not knowing exactly how to do that.
And I'm
Quick
wondering if
oh.
you could unpack that for me at least, the 70-20-10 model. I'm learning and development is not exactly my wheelhouse.
Yeah, sure. So 70-20-10, it's a framework that's been around for quite some time. It's a little controversial. It is as a little caveat, you know, it's not really intended to be specific with the numbers, real specific, but in general, it says 70% of workplace learning happens through direct experience, 20 happens through interaction with other people, and 10 happens as a result of formal training. It gets a lot of pushback from people that are big believers in formal training, as you might imagine. But that's part of the problem too, right? So anyway, this type of shift where learning and development is not just about formal training, but it's opening up to supporting the full picture of workplace learning, which according to this framework, 90% of is informal.
Okay, so go ahead, Wendy.
No, Miguel, I can hang on to it.
So
It'll be
from
there.
what you know from this team, are they firm believers in formal training, or they're kind of open based on that shift to 70-20-10 or whatever it is?
Yeah, I think they're somewhere in the process. You know, I don't think they're hardcore believers. And in general, the field is really opening up to this idea. I think that the big challenge is, how do you make that transition? What does it look like? I think there's a lot of it's kind of new territory for the field as a whole. Really, there's not like a bunch of best practices to just implement when it comes to this. So it's very much kind of a discovery process, I think, for the field as a whole, which is exciting for me, but is confusing for a lot of people too, right? Because there's no blueprint for it really. And they've made some attempts to. They brought in a consultant in the past. He's actually pretty well known, and they found his approach very kind of analytical and didn't really take, and they struggled with it. So, but there's still a goal, and it's they recognize it as really a necessity, which I would make the case it is for learning and development everywhere.
So I have a question about what's the degree of leadership involvement, and besides, I assume, sponsorship, but I mean, are they, and not just maybe the person who sponsored it either, the L&D leader, but is there other leaders involved in this initiative?
Yeah, so the main client is the L&D leader, but they're part of the talent management team. So there's also a sponsor and talent management team a little bit higher up. And the involvement, this is really presented as a co-creative pilot. So actually we have a strategy session coming up here in a couple of weeks where the invitation is really to get together with them and work to design some of the specifics of the pilot program. So part of my goal too is to come to that session with some clear thinking around maybe how liberating structures can play into this and the value of that. But yeah, they're going to be there in the strategy session, and we're going to define some stuff, and then we're going to roll out the 3-month pilot with the three workshops.
Can we just wrap up with Wendy and Corina?
Okay, good. Sorry.
And then we'll get into consultation, I think.
Over to you, Corina, and I'll go last.
Thank you. Tom, what would be your clients' I don't know if that's the right phrasing, but the minimal outcome of the three sessions? Like when would you feel this was a success? This is what I hoped for. What would people say, or how would they feel, or what would have happened?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think for the pilot, I think a big one is, around engagement. And, so I think I'm really looking for participants to be, and that's really tied to the sensation of work, changing their perception of what they're doing. So to make work more meaningful, to be excited about the future of their role in the organization and the future of the team's role within the organization. Excited about the new potential and possibility that they're perceiving that they didn't before. That'd be a big one. So I think engagement is a big one. I think part of that is, the mindset shift kind of shows up there. And then I think a very concrete outcome would be, that we have a contract for an ongoing engagement. So this would be, this is the 3 months is positioned as the first phase of really an ongoing thing. So ideally that would be, to get them in a more of an ongoing engagement following that.
This is going to sound, or I'm self-editing, it sounds in my mind super dumb. What does this company do, sell, or produce?
They are in the lighting business. They produce they're a leader, worldwide leader in the lighting business. They do smart grids for cities. They make light bulbs. They do smart grids for cities. They do all kinds of lighting projects, to the bit highest scale.
So from light bulbs right through to an entire grid, an urban grid. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Okie
That's right.
dokie.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And I think that we've got a reasonable sense of sort of what Tom is working on. So Tom, I'll invite you to turn off your webcam and put yourself on mute. But again, pay very close attention and listen in as we spit raps on your situation.
Well, appreciate the great questions and the opportunity to share. Thank you.
So the questions that I have for us as a group are twofold, right? What are the structures that we think might be useful to address this first set of, or maybe the first set of conversations, and how might you weave them together? Is there any logic in the sort of order of operations? So,
Well, the first thing I thought of is purpose to practice, and that he engages with the group to figure out, okay, what is it we're really doing? Purpose to practice says very real. It's a start of an initiative, so that it sort of seems a natural way to start.
Yeah, I have min specs. Just like what are the must do's, must not do's for achieving the purpose.
I'm still not clear. I don't have a sense that the purpose is yet really, really clear. At least it's not for me. It feels like a beta testing, so that the first 3 months would be a beta test to actually gain clarity. There's something that I'm sensing is, I want to call it iceberging. I'm sensing something very deep that is going to be revealed through this process. I'm just working instinctively, and fascinating that it's a lighting company, which means illuminating. And there's something
not
in the
clear.
There's something hiding in the dark.
And
Right.
Wendy, do you have any intuitions about what would be a good structure that you could use to maybe get a grip or an initial probe on what that unclarity or that thing underneath in the dark is?
I think as facilitators, especially as I have found so many times in my career, we teach what we need to know. We facilitate what we need to know, that we end up accompanying on our clients, we have a few more tools. We're just a couple feet ahead of them in the tunnel. You know, and we've got a few more survival techniques that they haven't learned. So I think there's something around in Tom's transition from the way he facilitates the learning energy with his clients, moving into lighting that up. How comfortable is he in experiential learning, in workshop? Okay, sound like absolutely. I'm trying to find the right words and images, not to waste too much time.
No, that's all right. If you want, well, you can sit on it for a minute and we can see. what
Okay,
else
then I
is in
will
the
do.
group.
How
then-
comfortable is Tom? Maybe some beta sessions with other clients or people or within this group where he can, you know, kind of get onto the monkey bars himself and see how that feels. I'll be quiet now for a minute.
I had a couple of things, and they're not related, so I don't know if you can really put them together. One is to find that dark spot that Wendy was mentioning. Probably do a TRIZ and put people and say, do all the ridiculous things that you may think that are not working here, and start with that. And something that I got from Tom, and probably most of us didn't know about that 70, 20, 10 or whatever it's called. And maybe as he said, there is not a lot of expertise, but probably somebody knows what it is. So I would think at some point a user experience fishbowl could do it to kind of open that knowledge to the group, and then the group start asking questions and to the expert that is in the fishbowl, if he can find one.
So one other thing I would also do is I would take what was just said and then do 15% solutions, and then go from there to like an agreement certainty matrix. And then with that, you can actually start to really do things like eco-cycle planning. You know, you can start to do sort of larger, you'll have a lot of inputs, let's say.
Would you
and a
repeat
lot of
those,
engagement.
Aaron? Would you repeat those?
Yeah, so take the TRIZ and the 15% solution. The 15% solution is basically just what can we get done now, you know, from anybody. And then you can take that input, and then you can build on that, I should say, and do the agreement certainty matrix, which basically sorts everything into simple, complicated, and complex, right? You just create your categories, and assuming you have agreement, everyone agrees that that's what it is, or enough of them agree. And then from that, you can take on more life cycle type structures or activities. Really, it doesn't have to just be an LS, but you can start, because you'll have a lot of you'll have momentum, and you should have at least a pretty good categorization or a taxonomy of what we think we can get done now, what we know we don't want to do, and how we sort of split things up between simple, basically, you know, easy, intermediate, and sort of advanced. And then from that,
like building the monkey bars and the slide, and then seeing how that works?
Exactly.
Okay.
And you can do that not in a lot of sessions, what was just talked about, like TRIZ 15%, you know, a bunch of these, you can put that together, let's say objectively, in a couple of sessions, and you're not going to freak people out or anything. And then that gives you a lot to work from, like it gives you a lot of clay that's real at that point.
I want to just shift us a little bit. It sounds, you know, Aaron and Wendy are sort of, it sounds like you're pointing to problems, and let's deal with the problems. And I think we're really looking more for solutions, and it's more about out of the box. You know, the problem is the status quo, which, you know, really Liberating Structures addresses. And so I think to harness the power of the group and have them generate ideas. And so, you know, using using the obvious structure of 1, 2, 4 all, so that everybody, all the voices are heard, but also to work together to come up with a better model, which is what Tom had started talking about. He mentioned the Netflix model. I don't quite understand it, but I could sort of figure that out. Which isn't, and it didn't seem like he thought that was a great thing. So L&D may not like that because it's much more about entertainment than about education. But there's a lot. I think the individuals need to be valued and shown that they have really great ideas and are able to offer it. And so, something like a fishbowl would work well together. It would work well, but also, maybe 9 whys to really get at what it is that they, not what problem they're solving, but what's the result that they want to create, and then how do we go about creating it. And so maybe that's through impromptu networking, in terms of or troika, where small groups figure that out together and then they share with a larger group.
And one other pattern that I haven't heard mentioned that also jumps out that I feel like has some overlap that could pair really well with this idea of a user experience fishbowl, is discovery action dialogue, right? So to find the people or spaces that we think are pretty good at this more experiential or tacit knowledge sharing, and to think about, hey, what do these guys do that we might want to sort of upregulate to the rest of the environment? Could be a very fruitful dialogue, and practice some deep respect for the local solutions that I'm sure already exist in a company of any meaningful size. There are probably people already doing exactly what you would hope everyone should do. So how to sort of find and tap on that knowledge base. And I'm also mindful that, like, we've been going through these structures pretty quick. I'd actually like to back us up real quick and unpack some of the structures that we have mentioned so far. So so that we do this, not just drop the names, but we can also, because Tom himself said that he didn't have a whole lot of experience with these structures. So if we can unpack them and let him know what is in the content of the structure so that he can make an evaluation about whether or not that might work for him. So the first one up on the list was purpose to practice. Who wants to unpack that one for us?
Well, I brought it up. I'm not well versed enough to really unpack it well, except to read right off of the app. If you want me to, I could do that, but I will. The purpose to practice, the stakeholders shape together the elements that will determine the success of their initiative. And so the way it works is groups of 4, and then basically you walk through 5 elements. The first one being purpose. So ask the question, why is work important to you and the larger community? And it's, so why is this initiative or whatever it is, fill in that blank, Tom. And then step through principles, participants, structure, and practices. And the questions are, what rules must we absolutely obey to succeed in achieving a purpose? That's principles, participants, who can contribute to achieving our purpose and must be included in structure. How must we organize both macro and micro and distribute control to achieve our purpose? And last, practices, what are we going to do? What will we offer to our users, clients, and how will we do it? And it seems like those are really rich questions that would shape a larger initiative.
Awesome, thank you. And then min specs was also on our laundry list.
Yeah. So min specs allows you to basically determine what the must do's are and the must not do's, assuming you have a purpose that's been defined, or some type of concise objective. And so, you can construct a very simple one, that takes 15-20 minutes, or a much more complicated one, or one that is a string together with others. I do like the stringing process and doing things like 9 whys and 1, 2, 4 all to sort of feed the min specs, and that will, that should get a lot of participation and a lot of let's say consensus on the things that most would agree they have to be done, and most would agree don't make sense yet to get done. Assuming the purpose is once again defined, it's clear and concise.
Awesome. And then I might build on that by saying that the min specs usually starts with, I think, the maximum specification. So think of the laundry list of everything that you might start with, and then really being very rigorous about, hey, if this is our purpose, could we ignore this particular element and still be successful in our purpose? And as long as the answer is, well, yeah, we could ignore that, then toss it out and look for the minimum set of stuff that goes, no, if we ignore this stuff, there's no way we can deliver on our purpose. And vice versa, right? Around the must not do's.
It's really important to have that purpose, though. I mean, everyone has to agree in the invitation, or everyone has to at least agree that is the invitation, is that clear purpose.
Which might be a good transition to unpack 9 whys. I know it sounds a little obvious, but who wants to unpack 9 whys for us? Noemi? You know 9 whys. I know
yeah,
you know 9 whys.
I know very well. I've been using it my whole week, even for personal reasons, and I still think it's one of the most liberating structures. So basically, it's a model of asking yourself a question and then answer, and then ask yourself, why is that your answer? And then answer again to that, and then go again with why, and why for 9 times, in order for you to reach the very core of motivation for what is your answer.
Totally. Yeah, really mapping out the constellation.
I can say it better, but
yeah. Thanks, Noemi. I appreciate you rising to the challenge as I put you on the spot. Yeah, so we really want to map out the constellation of meaning, significance, and purpose around our intended outcome. And there's a pattern that builds on that you can find in one of these slide decks. I have it if you can't find it, which is a 9-word purpose statement, which mates up really well with 9 whys. It just says like, hey, what are the good positive things that we want for what purpose? And bam, you've got yourself a purpose statement. Another structure that we had made mention of was TRIZ. Who wants to unpack TRIZ for us?
Okay, I was the one that brought TRIZ, so I guess it's me. Disclaimer, I haven't done it one time, so I just read about it. But in fact, when I started to read Liberating structures, I found that in the past, I saw something very similar to TRIZ and was referred as reverse brainstorming, and kind of unpacks that in a different concept, which is there is that hidden problem or that dark area that is not working, or something that Wendy was mentioning. So let's try to get to the worst case scenario possible. And it becomes very, very entertaining for the people trying to say, hey, this is the worst that we can do to lose all the customers, or nobody's going to learn anything in this case, right? So you start unpacking those and then taking notes of the things that were said, and then you start looking at, okay, what of those things are we actually doing today that basically doesn't allow us to meet our goal? So that is, and what I have seen in a couple of videos and in one that I participated with the Texas group is very entertaining when you start doing that. So it brings the group together very easily.
Awesome.
I
I
don't
like
know.
it. You,
That
you're
enough?
you're even offering an invitation, right? How do we ensure no one learns anything? That's a great invitation. And then we've got user experience fishbowl. Thanks, Miguel.
Okay, that was me too. Yeah,
Thanks for stepping up. I mean, it doesn't have to be you, so it's not like, hey, you mentioned user experience fishbowl. You have to explain this thing, right? I mean, it could be. But...
I'm gonna have a quick take on it, and basically it came from Tom's description of that 70, 20, 10. That at least I didn't know anything. Jeremy didn't know anything about it, and probably these guys don't know much about it. So bringing people that actually have life experience on it and having them in the middle, having a conversation about how they use it or how they improve something with 70, 20, 10 is going to start the discussion. And the idea is to have more than one expert talking with other experts or people, at least people that already use it and so some positive results on it, and share that experience with the external team that will be outside that fishbowl. And then after they discuss between them without basically participation of the team, the team can start asking questions about that. I don't know if that summarizes it, but it allows sharing the experience of people that already have it in their own life.
Awesome. Yeah, that's about it, right? And then 15% solutions. Aaron, you got a whole bunch, man. You got 15% solutions, agreement.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Eco-cycle. No, that's good. It's cool, man. Let's make them salient for folks.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's nice, 15% solution is literally what it sounds like. It's to basically discover and focus on what people have in their existing power to get done now, relative to, they don't have to go back and get budgets and the business cases and massive team collaboration, working agreements, and et cetera. But like, what can everyone agree, or can individually agree, or in new group formations agree could get done right now? Whatever's in front of them with all of the authority, tools, capabilities, everything. And that list is usually, I found, factors, to some cases an order of magnitude larger than most people think, primarily because they just don't go through an exercise like this and sort of categorize all of it. And so, you just basically, and it also depends on how big the group is, right? If the group's 40 people, well, then that's gonna be a little different. But if it's a smaller group, 4, 6, maybe 8 people, you should be able to pretty quickly, 15, 10, 20 minutes, basically, have a pretty exhaustive list and just build a list from there and use a Google Suite or O365 type tool and just keep, categorizing them. That's a high level. I mean, I don't know if you want me to go into the weeds, but
that's good. Agreement certainty matrix. We had a little bit of meat on, right? That helps divide the portfolio into simple, complicated, and complex.
That's right. And it's kind of an introduction to Cynefin, which we don't have to talk about right now, but that can be your own thing if you don't know what it is over time.
No, we can piss Dave Snowden off right now by saying Cynefin and the Stacy matrix are the same thing.
Yeah,
Matter of
okay,
fact, I'm
but
gonna
whatever.
tag him on
I
Twitter.
don't care about the egos. It doesn't. It's a tool, right? But the thing that I think matters about agreement certainty matrix, I mean, what I found is that most people, I mean, all of us, we get solve mode going, and we don't align methods really well. So we get kind of misaligned between methods and solving, and then it just like smash into each other, and then we say friction, and then we say it's unsolvable, and it's just like the methods and the solving weren't lined up. And so agreement certainty matrix allows this sort of unpacking and reordering into things that are, simple, complicated, complex, and or chaotic. And then the set of methods almost like teasers, probers that you can leverage to work in each of those quadrants or categories, if that makes sense.
And this is, the visual really helps to make sense of this one.
Thank you.
So I'm sharing the screen. So if you think about agreement on the vertical axis, that's vertical, right? Yeah. Agreement about what we're going to do, right? So if we're far from agreement, we're way out on the axis. If we're close to agreement, we're close to the center. And then around the how, for example, if we have certainty of how, very close to certainty, we're very close to the middle. If we're very far from certainty, we're way out here on the edge. And based on the interaction of those two factors, agreement about what and certainty on how, that kind of gives us an indication of if we're in this area of complex problems, where we want to then probe, sense, respond in order to come to our answers, or if we're somewhere here in the complicated areas or domains where we want to lean into first sensing and then an analysis before we come up with our response, or if we're in this simple domain where, you know, we're basically going to do a sense and just lump it into a bucket quite roughly and basically, and then come to our action. Or if we're in, you know, a totally chaotic environment where actually there's no relationship between cause and effect, you know, categorizing, sensing, categorizing, probing, you know, and analysis is all just going to be a waste of time. So let's just do something and get going, so to speak.
And so one of the things I've done that I found is extremely effective in just one session is you do a couple of the sort of intro ones, the structures, the impromptu 1, 2, 4, all kind of get the flow going. You do 15% and you just do the simple inside the agreement matrix, and you come out like with an action plan basically. And you can do all of that in definitely under 2 hours, like soup to nuts, with a whole bunch of people who don't know what they're doing either, which is fine because these are all very I'd say self-organizing. So that's a way I've done that, as a sort of, when leaders are like, well, what are we doing? What are we getting done? Right? It's like you can come up with that. Well, here's what we're doing. Please leave us alone again. And then and I found that to be a pretty effective sort of heuristic. I don't know if that made sense or not, but
I think so. But I mean, maybe I'm not the audience.
Made sense to you. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I got my validation for 7 a.m. whatever.
And then I think
8
sort of
a.m.
last but not least is the eco cycle planning. And that one, who thinks they have maybe an edgy take on eco cycle planning? And I'm gonna help you out with a visual here, so bear with me. But who wants to unpack that one?
I'll give it a shot. Eco cycle planning looks at basically a continuum of, hold on, let me just get the image up, but a continuum of birth to growth to maturity to creative destruction. I love that term. And the idea is to map out where things are on that scale, and get to a sense of purpose that way, as well as status. I don't know. I hope I explained that well enough.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's important about it, that it highlights where people have rigidity, or that they're stifled for whatever reason,
or the whole idea of poverty, where you haven't had time to put attention to.
That's exactly right. So it's like they're either like, if it's corporate mode, right? They're stuck grinding out pointless decks and doing things like that, and then there's all this sort of really interesting stuff happening internally, but you're not able to really put the energy into it. And so you can, so when you do these others as a string, and then it feeds this, you, assuming it's the same people, you have an enormous amount of healthy energy and ideas and sort of facts coming in that can then, you know, kind of get it up and running. And one thing I've been able to do with this sometimes is make it so it's self-managed. So it's like I kick it off once or twice with a team, and then they just sort of run it, because it's sort of self-evident because it's their activity, it's not mine. Like, they're the ones who actually know their domain, not me. And
yeah, so this might, to make it a little bit more concrete for the question that Tom brought in, it might be an idea to either take the portfolio of activities that the team is doing right now, and then thinking through the lens of like, okay, but this 70-20-10 thing, where are our activities in the eco cycle? You know, if my activities are create catalog of learning opportunities, is that something that is like actually in gestation, or do we want to move that guy out to pasture and put it in creative destruction? Are there sticky things that we're doing that we're actually just stuck in that rigidity trap that we would rather stop, but we don't really know how to get off the I don't know what the learning and development equivalent of petroleum is, like oil addiction. Pedagogy. There we go. That's it. Right? So that might be a way in which to use the eco-cycle planning to analyze the portfolio of activities and see what you want to start shifting, and what do you want to have, how do you want to develop a different relationship to those individual items.
And you know what's cool about this is that you can do A/B tests. So let's say there's like 70-20-10 is like, you know, one group, and then let's say there's the 3M 15 percenters are another group, you know, which is this old model that Google basically did too, which is 15% of your time you could do something else at work. You know, so you could try A/B tests of different things with this and just see what shakes out, so that you're not stuck. So you don't feel like you've been someone's imposed the structure onto you, that you've either bought into it or that you've reshaped it.
So to use a couple different lenses through which to place your items onto the eco cycle and see how that changes your understanding of them. Cool.
Yep. And the other thing, that the last piece is that the personality types, and people aren't linear, they're not only one thing, but let's say the way people lean in personality types maps really interesting to this, because you have a manager, an entrepreneur, a networker, and sort of they call it like a heretic or whatever, but just sort of like a chaos engineer, I kind of call it. And you can figure those people out if you got a big enough group, so that when you think you need something, you know, so let's say you're birthing something, so you're in that entrepreneurial, and you're like, okay, you know, but like we need some management now, like now we got to get something done. You can go grab someone that's sort of leaned that way over experiences of doing this 3-4 times. And or if you're really stuck and it's boring and people are just like not even paying attention, boom, you bring in your chaos engineer, and then it's like kaboom, a bunch of stuff kicks off again.
Word. So there's a relationship between knowing the type of skills that you sort of need in that phase, in that development phase as well. There is a couple other structures. So discovery, action, dialogue, like I said, might mate really well with a user experience fishbowl. Or at least help you identify who are the people you would like to have in that user experience fishbowl. Discovery, action, dialogue looks like a conversation, a small group conversation, usually between 4 and 7 people in the group, where one person plays the role of host and helps sort of guide the group to answer 7 questions. And those 7 questions look roughly like, how do you know when the problem is present? How do you contribute to the solution? What prevents you to do this all the time? Do you know someone who has solved this? Do you have any ideas? What needs to be done? Volunteers, and who needs to be involved? So thinking through that portfolio of questions, especially this fourth one of do you know someone who has solved this, is really interesting to think about the people that you might then want to put into that user experience fishbowl and go, hey, it seems like you guys have really good solutions for this challenge that we're up against. Might we just, be able to listen as you guys talk shop about how you do that and see what we could learn based on hearing that conversation. I also think that maybe this is a little bit on the nose, but this pattern, wise crowds, as well as Troika Consulting, if you're trying to move to a different relationship around learning, are also very interesting patterns. That might be a tool that I would say, hey, guys, let's just do this in order to offer this at some form of scale. But that one's also in there. I also noticed that, Aaron, when you were talking about 15% solutions, another thing that jumped out at me, maybe in addition to the agreement certainty matrix, was 25-10 crowdsourcing.
Yeah, it's good.
25-10 crowdsourcing, if we were in traditional meet space, would invite everybody to write their favorite idea, their favorite 15% solution on an index card. Then we would trade index cards over and over and over again so that I didn't know which card I had. And then when the timer went off, I would just look at that card. I would go, what do I think of this idea? On a scale of 1 to 5, if 1 is, nah, this is trash, or 5 is, this is great, I would be willing to invest my time and energy to make this happen. Just write 1 to 5 on the back of the card, repeat that whole pattern 5 times. And by the end of that, we have now effectively crowdsourced, so 25-10 crowdsourcing with a maximum score of 25, the more or less best ideas in the group, or the group that have the strongest support that we might want to take forward and consider.
Yeah, so I've done that virtually now with Mural and like Slido or Menti, and it's kind of clunky, but whatever, it works. Like where you do the voting and people can stay anonymous, and it works. I mean, it's good enough. Like if for some reason you can't be co-located, or there isn't the resources or whatever. So
yeah, David Heath, one of the OGs in the liberating structure scene, also has programmed a like a standalone app, if I can find it. I'll put it in the notes. But that is, I actually wanted to check in with Wendy. You started off with this sense of like sort of squishiness and maybe something is hidden in the dark. Were you able to sort of think of a way that you might want to suggest that they investigate or probe into that?
I'm still digesting because I'm so new to liberating structures. I'm still just reconstellating purpose to practice. The work that you do correlates exactly to the way I've been working. So I'm just trying to integrate your vocabulary. And as I've been listening, I've been making a gazillion notes, the 9 whys, 9 word purpose. So I've kind of moved out of that intuitive space into writing things down. There's still something. There's still something that feels unclear, missing, hidden. Something very basic and something pragmatic. And it feels that it's about the culture. There's a hidden energy in the mix that could become an obstacle. That's really a very strong sense for me. I don't know if that makes sense for Tom or anyone else. I just have a very strong sense that as John and Aaron and Miguel mentioned some of your techniques for letting the group safely bring this out. I thought was fantastic, to create a safe structure where nobody is challenging the status of anybody else, but feels empowered to have a voice, to voice whatever it is that's going on. Does that answer your question, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to sort of end on, with this invitation to think about that thing that is sort of under the waterline, that might come out and bite you if you don't pay attention to it. I think we've got some ideas in our recommendations to address that. So thanks, Wendy, for surfacing that. And then, Tom, I would invite you at this juncture. We've been going for a good long while, chopping it up about your situation. Tell us, my friend, what do you take away from this, and what might you have the most appetite to make use of?
Yeah, well, first of all, this is very valuable. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate that. I think lots of good insights. I think really what jumped out at me, I'm very familiar with Cynefin, and in fact, I've been on the fence. I've used it explicitly before with teams, and for this particular one, I've been on the fence. Do I want to bring it in explicitly in this first 3 months or not? So I think the what was it? The agreement certainty matrix is very interesting to me, because I think this really and this might even actually touch on what Wendy is trying to get to here, because I think a really fundamental challenge in this field, and perhaps in all fields, one could argue, is that it is really related here, right? We don't have the tools and the mindsets to engage in the complex realm, right? And or there's a big shortage of it, right? We haven't been educated to really engage in the complex realm. And if you talk about learning and development, for example, there's a lot of systems really stuck treating everything like they're simple or complicated, right? And that's really where this attachment to formal training comes in my view, is that everything we often treat complex challenges as simple or complicated, and then from an L&D perspective, it's like, okay, we throw some training at it, and we're trying to feed people best practices, which only works on the simple level, and even on the complicated level, it doesn't work, right? Or at best, we have these processes that are really heavy on front-end analysis, when that's not the right approach, right? So I think a big thing I'm trying to do with the L&D team is build their awareness around this, right? And to see, okay, like this is really about, as a team, building the capability for dealing with more complexity, and at the same time growing into a role that is helping others throughout the organization do the same thing. And I think that links up to 70-20-10 in an interesting way too, because you can argue that, especially in the complex realm, the learning process is very much is far more informal, or it's far more rooted in experience and in interaction with other people, right? As opposed to implementing existing practices or analyzing your way into a solution. So I think all these things kind of come together. I think that's the agreement certainty matrix, I think, is something I'm really going to take a close look at bringing into the eco-cycle planning. I think too could be interesting there as well, and getting them to kind of, again, develop that awareness around this, this way of thinking that's, again, stuck in the simple and complicated realm, and the mindsets, the assumptions, the beliefs that they have around that, and kind of breaking out of those. because I think to Wendy's point, for example, I love that connection to the lighting, you know, and you know, you can make the connection to probing on the complex level too, right? It's the task is not to bring in an expert that has the answer, right? That'd be appropriate in the complicated realm, but we're dealing with more complexity here. The task is to probe as a team, to shine a light on what is hidden in the darkness, and there's no way to analyze your way into that. So anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Amen. And that I love to do this because I love Kinevin as well. And but I thought find the Stacy matrix, which is the agreement certainty matrix, is simpler to explain to people that don't have any familiarity with it. And one of the things that you're describing, I think, is also very explicit on the Stacy matrix, is that the tooling doesn't work for the upward stages, meaning that the way that I solve simple problems doesn't work in complicated, just like the way I solve complicated problems doesn't work in complex, and the way complex solutions don't work in chaotic. But the other way around does work. As you sort of go down the stack towards simplicity, I can use even chaotic problem solving to address a simple situation. It might waste time, but it'll work at least. And I can use complex problem solving to solve both complicated and simple. Again, the farther I get away from its sort of home domain, the more energy I might waste, but at least it will work. Whereas if I try and take complicated, so complicated, it works for simple, wastes a little bit of energy, but it works. But if I try to apply complicated and complex, I sort of upgrade myself into chaos, right? It just starts breaking stuff. So, well, Tom, I'm glad that you enjoyed listening to us chop it up around your situation. That is actually the time that we've got today. So I would like to thank everybody for hanging out and joining us in this Wise Crowds design call. If you didn't leave your email in the Google Doc, please do, so I can send you a digital badge of participation that one day in the future might be really, really important. We're still making up the rules of the game, but it's possible. You never know. So thanks everybody for hanging out, and I hope. Wow, John, you were lots of static, maximum static. On that note, have a great day. I hope
That was really bad.
Right. What I wanted to say is thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Can't wait to come
Thanks,
back.
everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
When's your next one, Jeremy? Shall I just look on the
Yeah, we host this Wise Crowds design call is every Monday at the same time, except for the first Monday of the month, we do something different, but that's pretty cool too. So you might want to hang out.
I think I need to get the book and get myself up to speed.
Same.
Come to these events and just grind. I'm serious. Like that. No, I mean, that tends to be my philosophy for like 99% of life. But I mean, and I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but you really do learn. I mean, I went from never hearing of this 4 years ago, literally just like, huh? And then just sort of tried the like lame, let me read a lot, lame. And then I just started going to the meetups when they were physical. I live outside of New York. And then when COVID hit, it was, I mean, like of all the bad things in COVID, like the one good thing of COVID is seriously, I attended, I don't know, 40 between all the different meetups in the world that do liberating structures. I probably did about 40 of them, and probably maybe more, maybe 70, and then probably at least 20 with Jeremy, one way or the other, where he's leading or we're part of it. And then when you have that structure of these as meetings, it is like that 70, 20, 10 in a weird way. like your reading is different. Like you're reading for a purpose. Like, oh, I don't know how to do this. Oh, I tried that and I was like a consumer of it. But like, if I want to actually lead it, oh wow, I gotta like know how to do this. And so and then it lets you volunteer when you go to these meetups, right, Jeremy or others, like, hey, don't put me in charge, but I want to help, right? So you can kind of go through that, like help 2 or 3 times, do the easier structures, and then you just kind of get your sea legs. And then pretty
Yeah.
soon you get over the confidence hurdle and you just wing it, which
Well,
is
I'm very
generally the way I
confident
do it.
facilitating on screen.
Yeah.
Started lockdown in playback. So we were improvising. I think we were 6 different time zones, improvising live
Yeah, that's cool.
on Zoom.
No
But
one got
Aaron,
hurt, right? No, no one got
good God,
hurt,
no.
right? So like, you
How
know.
do you use it with client? I'm just going to like take 3 little minutes because I've got a client at 5 o'clock. How have you been using this, or what's your client base like? Oh, sorry, no, Amy.
No, I'm here. So, oh, go ahead. I mean, are you asking me or?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
felt
work
you
for,
might have
yeah.
wanted
So I
to
work
say
for,
something, and I'm
yeah. So I work for a big IT service company, and I work in the industrial vertical, and I run a
sounds
product
very
group within that.
uncomfortable, Aaron.
No, that's fine. It's okay. And it's actually great. It's actually a lot of fun because we're changing how plants run. We're, you know, like the stuff that we wouldn't be on the screen with some of these products, right? Because you got to make things in the world, right? You can't just talk about making things.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of legacy approaches, but not necessarily mindsets. I think that's something people don't appreciate with a lot of sort of industrial design, industrial production people. They're actually pretty dynamic people, but they have a lot
Hugely
of sort of,
dynamic. Because
exactly.
they've
But
got to
they have
get
a
a
lot of
widget
legacy.
produced and sold.
Yeah, exactly. But they have a lot of legacy sort of processes, would be the right way to put it, that sort of constrains them. And so all I've done is, with the different teams I'm on, is, hey guys, we're going to call it innovation because you got to call it something, spreadsheet, and get the budget approval and the project code. Fine, whatever. So we do that, get that out of the way. And now we're going to do little teaming basically. And you just tease out. So at the beginning of the meeting, we're not going to be like, we're doing liberating structures now, or, you know, like no one likes to do things like that, right? So what I do is say, hey guys, as a kickoff, I have this cool little facilitation thing I just learned last week, right? Even if I did it for 4 years, I don't care. I just say it. Like they know I just didn't learn any of this stuff after a while. So then I just do 1, 2, 4 all. And I don't even tell them we're doing 1, 2, 4 all from liberating structures.
Absolutely
what happens is they aren't stupid. So they do a search and they figure out it's 1, 2, 4 all. And then they say, hey, are we doing this thing called liberating structures? I'm like, yeah. And then I don't say anything else. They're like, well, can you tell us about it? Sure, but I don't have my deck this week. And so I keep pushing them to just do stuff. They're smart people who've discovered how to make the stuff that we have everywhere on Earth. And then eventually everyone gets to this, okay, Aaron, thanks. You got us to the kumbaya phase. Now, like, really dump the stuff on us. And that's when I pull all the decks and all the other stuff in.
Where did you come from
gone
to get into, like, just really quickly, because I really have to run, and I'm sure Jeremy has had enough as well.
Yeah.
Where'd you come from? So why is it you here now with those guys and women and whatnot? Where'd you come?
So I worked at a big IT company called Cognizant for about 16 years. I
What were
ran
you doing?
I ran a big services practice, a big P&L, and so, you know, a business basically. And I mean, I'm not you guys. I'm not coaches. I'm not all the cool people. I'm the anti-pattern, actually, like literally. I am the evil. I'm the wrong human. I'm the one that should have been eliminated amongst all the cool people.
I love that.
So no, I mean, I come from, you know, I was in the Army. I did Unix admin, DBA, Oracle, PeopleSoft. I worked at Honeywell doing industrial processes. Then I went to Cognizant, earned my way up to running a P&L. Then I joined this company in reasonably, let's say, senior middle management. And I was given a innovation portfolio, basically, that was really innovative and spread all over the place, kind of a mess. And so I said, all right, let's start de-suckifying. That's like kind of a military and high technical world, right? You don't, it's not about taking people with a B plus and get them to A plus. It's about taking all those F minuses and D's and getting them to C minus, because then you just de-suckify like Earth. And now after you do that, and usually they'll take it from there anyways, but after you do that, now you can do some of the really cool stuff. And it's kind of how you teach classrooms of kids, basically. And
yeah, you're an infiltrator.
Yeah, totally. That's exactly right.
Which is great. Because
but I lean on the business P&L side, so that's what allows me to infiltrate.
Which means
numbers
that you're not at all threatening. You present as recognizable.
Yeah, no, totally. That's right. I can show up in a
can
suit. I can do the first 40 slides that everyone's asleep on, and then I can like throw my little chaos engines in there.
Yeah.
And then those are teasers. I don't try to make anyone do anything right now ever, because I know that's just not, like, you can't make your dog do something, much less your kid, much less your aunt, much less anyone else right now. So I just kind of stay away from that. And then I just kind of say, hey, so in sales, there's a very simple process, which is get the next meeting. That's it.
Absolutely.
That's all it is.
That's all you need.
The next meeting.
That's your entire objective.
And so that's all I do with Liberating Structures. Let's get the next meeting. And I always say, do you guys like any of this? And they always usually say, yeah, or yeah, bud, or I got lost here. Okay, cool. How about if we clean that one up next time? Oh, yeah, that'd be cool. And then that's the next meeting. And that's literally it. Like, that's my template. I have no magic coaching book. No. I don't have all these certifications.
Neither do I.
I've been coaching
since a coach was a guy with a whistle and shorts.
That's right. And so actually, by the way, the last things, I know you got to go to your meeting, but so I actually coached soccer, football for a long time, and ref actually. So I was up to like a level 5, level 4 FIFA ref. So so that world actually became my coaching development world in reality, because and I did a lot of, basically up to under 16s, most of my stuff I did. And so there's just like, they're sick of school, they're sick of their parents, and they don't need to be sick of someone else. And so I was always like, look, I'm not here to make your lives hard. Like, if you want to get good at this,
but
it's kind of defined on how to get good at it.
Yeah,
if you don't, and you just want to work out and hang out with your friends, you get the ones that want to do that. All I ask is stay and become a role player. Like, don't be an F minus, be at least a C minus.
Yeah.
And then eventually the kids would be like, well, I don't want to be a C minus either. Okay, well, that's on you now. Like, you want to do the Barcelona Rondos now? Cool. Now you can be a B minus eventually, right? And then you build a team. Like, that's how I've learned, that's how you build a team. And as long as you get parents that aren't nuts, which is pretty hard. I was going to say, because they got to buy you the runway. They got to buy you that 1, 2, 3 years to get there. But once you get there, and then the kids self-govern. Like, in the end, I used to drive everyone crazy. I'd be like, make the lineup. You guys were at practice 3 times this week. You know who the 4 of you that are strikers, you actually know who our best number 10 is right now. Not me, you, because you're like on the field and you know who you don't want to cover right now. So you pick. And they would just pick their lineups. And that was it. And it was like, and then, it's the coolest thing about this to this day is the percentage of those kids I coach that are refs now and coaches is my standard if I did a good job. Because that says they love the game enough. I didn't burn them out like everyone else does, that they hate the game, don't play for 15 years.
You inspired them and you gave them.
Yeah. And that was it.
And
then I switched to reffing. And I switched to reffing because of the parents, really, to be honest. I just got sick of them. And
I know all about that.
Yeah. And then I went to reffing, and then reffing became this new thing where I had to get out of my over instrumentalization of solutions for people, because I had to play judge, and I had to. I'm a good judge. I'm a good judge of things like that. But I had to really come in almost like to be honest, like a Franciscan monk or like a Buddhist monk. Like, I just come in and it's like everyone is on a plane, and it's a lot.
You're a neutral, your whole thing.
And I'll tell you, the most interesting thing about reffing that I really learned or grew the most about is having to switch off when a player does something and start the judgment back at 0 with them. So not allow a cumulative judgment occur throughout the
Oh,
match.
right. That's really
Which is a
interesting.
big deal with kids, because kids are judged regularly like trash that way, which is like, well, you did the wrong assignment 9 months ago, and I'm holding, like, basically their parents hold them this way, their church, their kids, their rabbi, this, like everyone, their sister, their brother, like, and it just, you know, and that piles onto them, which is like, can I ever start again? Am I just this guilt machine for you? And so what I used to do, and the parents would be freaking out, that kid got a yellow card earlier. And it's like, no, right now, this judgment. Now, obviously, once in a while, there is a violent conduct kid who is that kid, and I just get them out of the game. I tell the coach, like, look, you got to, this kid ain't there today, or maybe never not there. That's not my problem, but like, get him out or I'm going to get him out. And that's that, right? But that was extremely rare. More often than not, because you know, with a kid, they're like, oh, you know, I didn't really want to do this. And I would tell them, just say sorry. Just say sorry to the other kid, you know? And it doesn't make you weaker. By the way, it's going to keep you in the game. I'm giving you a hint right now, you know, and then, you know, and then the kids had each other, we're okay. And, you know, because they all make that like, oops, because their body and their head and their wish got all mixed up. And so I kind of became, and then over time, I got these kids who basically said, you know, you're a really nice ref, like, which no one says that to a ref.
You got in at an important time in the development of the prefrontal cortex. So
yeah. So that was my hack through this. It is so totally weird compared to regular coaching people. So, yeah.
But it's another time, another space. I come from the arts, so we go from what do we want it to look like at the end and sound like and be experienced, and we always work backwards. So that's where and
I'm working my way towards arts, because I have a lot of art people in my family, but that was something I really didn't do. So as I get older, that's the piece I'm sort of, so I'm kind of got like the exact opposite. Like I'm kind of going the exact.
That's what I always find is just a great combination creatively, because you have these two, you know, we'll just call them opposed perspectives, but it's in the middle, in the tension of that, where all the gold is.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Where all the hidden, you know, the overlooked, because you're overlooking what I'm not overlooking, and I'm not over, you know, and then it's like,
and so there's things
dialogue
I
about that. It's like,
that,
oh my God, look what's there that you didn't see, that you know.
So there's stuff I discover that like people like you are going to be like, whatever, that was 1978, like, oh wow, that's a cool shock art thing, and you're going to be like, yeah, of course, back when I was in high school, that was, you know. And but for me at 51, that's kind of like, ooh, I'm like 14, like you were 14 then or whatever, when it was cool, and I'm discovering it 45 years later. And I don't care about these times. That's the other thing. I don't care about all these, like, I call it the ego continuum of time. I don't care.
And that doesn't bother
like whenever
me
I get it. It's good for me.
Absolutely.
The fact that you beat me at it by 45 years is irrelevant to me, you know?
Excuse my French, that's very American. It's not a competition. I could give a monkeys about that. Anyway, I've got to dive away.
Yep. Go make your money. Do your thing.
And thank you, Jeremy, for your generous hospitality.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Jeremy's the best.
Showing up.
Jeremy's the best. He's great.
Cool beans. I'm excited.
Especially when he goes all Dave Chappelle, which he does about every month, where he just kind of goes, I would love to see you in like regular life when you do that, because when you get all really animated and start throwing the bombs around, that's a lot of fun, actually. I'm convinced it's half shock.
Really good. I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. See you guys around. I gotta go pick up the kids. Thanks for
Thank
showing
you, Jeremy.
up.
Thanks,
Hanging out.
Aaron.
Man.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Yeah, great meeting you, Wendy.
Ta-ra.
Absolutely. Cheers.